Hello, I'm Emma-Louise Coffey and you're welcome to The Dairy Edge, the Teagasc Dairy podcast. We're bringing you the latest information, insights and opinion to improve dairy farm performance. The Dairy Edge went live as part of the Teagasc National Dairy Conference, where dairy farmer Dara Killeen and specialist Patrick Gowing joined us to discuss the targets set out in the Teagasc Dairy Roadmap and consider how these targets can be achieved at farm level. First though, we hear from Dara about his farming system.
Farming here in Aircourt in County Galway, so a lot of our land runs along by the River Shannon. This would have traditionally been a dry stock farm, so sheep and beef cattle. And we made the decision in 2017 to look into going into dairy farming. So I farm here with my dad, and two of us are in a registered farm partnership. And 2019 was our first year in milk, so we milked 100 cows that year. And this is our second year, so we milked 150 cows this year. It's me and Dad. He'd kind of be on a part-time basis at this stage. And then my fiancée Beatrix and my daughter Isabella would be about now and again. And the rest of it then is kind of contractors and part-time help. So I have one guy part-time during the week, and I have another guy then who's in college, and he comes part-time on the weekends and at holidays. So if you added in everybody, it's probably two people full-time. Very young herd, so we've 60% second calvers, 40% first calvers, so as young as you can get really. In our first year when we were all heifers, we did 380 kilos of milk solids off about, I think it was 540 kilos of meal. And then this year we're due to sell about 420 kilos of milk solids, a bit more meal due to the dry spell, so about 690 kilos this year. So fertility on the farm is good, as you would expect with a young herd. So I think our first year we did 87% 6-week calving rate. This year it jumped up to 92, and projected for next year it'll be quite high again. It'll be up around 90 again. Well, we prioritised our investments. So the stock was number one. So I bought the absolute best stock I could afford. We didn't really compromise on price. Then the next thing was what actually makes you the money, so that's your grass. So we reseeded a high percentage of the farm, and we put in good roadways and good water systems, good infrastructure to let us get at that grass for a long grazing season. We would have put in a 20-unit milking parlour, so we availed of the TAMS grant, and we would have put in a lot of cubicles and everything required. And we were probably lucky enough that we had a lot of slurry storage available. There was sheds that we converted to calf sheds and calving sheds, and we had an old sheep shed that we actually fitted a lot of cubicles into. So we really utilised what was on the farm and just added the new buildings around that. I suppose this year we'll grow 14 tonne. So there's definitely a bit of room for potential there. That includes some paddocks that were taken out for reseeding, so not all the ground was available included in that. Grazing season will be quite long here. We're a very dry farm, so as cows calve from the 1st of February, they go out and they'll be still out until mid-November. So we'll be touching 280, 290 days of grass.
And we'll go straight to you, Dara. Milking cows since 2019. Obviously the conversion process starts a long time before that. Can you talk us through the starting point and maybe the non-negotiables in terms of where you invested your money?
I suppose the first thing we did was develop a capital budget to see what investments were required on the farm, and then through Patrick at the Dairy Expansion Service we would have developed a 6-year business plan, so that really set it out the targets for the business going forward. I suppose the non-negotiables really was the stock, so we wanted to start on the right note, so we spent quite a lot of time sourcing the right stock. I would have travelled the country and viewed many different bunches of stock before we actually settled on what we wanted. But I probably had an idea of the system I wanted to implement on the farm. It was a grass-based system. We've quite a dry farm, so I wanted to have a cow that was going to be able to utilise all of that on the farm really.
And looking then, you talk about the type of stock you wanted. We look at maybe EBI and genetic merit as a starting point. What exactly were you looking for?
Yeah, well, I wanted an animal that was going to graze grass for a long period of time. As I said already, we have a dry farm, so I wanted an animal that would make use of all our farm. We went for a high EBI crossbred animal, so EBI was the guide for what we wanted, and I spent some time in New Zealand and I just liked the systems implemented there, so I would have probably identified farmers who were doing the system that I wanted and contacted them to see if they had stock for sale, or if they didn't, they might have put me in touch with somebody doing a similar system.
and a full herd of heifers last year, and 40% heifers, 60% second lactation this year, achieving really, really good performance. 380 kilos of milk solids last year, and target or expected of 420 this year. If we can take a step forward to this herd as a mature herd, what do you expect to see in terms of average milk solids produced?
Yeah, well, the target really, and set out in our business plan, the target would be 500 kilos of milk solids per cow. This year alone, looking back on our milk recordings, so on a 305 day predicted, I have 10% of my second lactation cows doing over 500 already. So that would definitely be the target, on about 500 kilos of meal, depending on weather events that might increase a small bit, but it would be about that. And we have a cow that when mature will be 500 kilos live weight. So she will be doing her own live weight in milk solids on a low level of imported feed.
And you talk about that low level of imported feed and high level of milk solids already. How are you achieving this?
Yeah, well, I suppose, you need your cows calving on time, or you're not going to achieve a long grazing season. So we'd be hitting the targets for that. We did 92% 6-week calving rate this year. It's going to be about 90 again next year. So we're getting a lot of cows calved in February. We have a dry farm, so we're getting cows out to grass as they calve. And I suppose we're setting the farm up well for the back end, that we have grass to continue grazing into November. So final grazing was on 20th of November this year. We would have missed a few days here and there with weather events and dry spells, but we would have done 280, 290 days of grass this year. I suppose grassland management then, you can have your cows calved in February, but if you have no grass to get out, so we would be doing budgets and following the autumn rotation planner and all that kind of thing.
And Patrick, when we consider the performance being achieved by Dara at this early stage, it is on par or maybe even better than existing dairy farmers. Is this something you would expect? And from your perspective on the outside looking in and knowing Dara's system, how is he doing it?
Yeah, so I'm lucky enough in my day job to have dealt with a lot of new entrants, and normally, I suppose when we looked at new entrants coming out of the quota period, no one really knew how they were going to perform, and since then there's a lot of people like Dara have blazed a trail in front of them. And what we would see is most new entrants by year 2 or 3 will be about the co-op average at least, and as the herd matures, and as we said already, like the heifers about 75% mature yield, heifers 80-85%, then when we get to a mature herd, they're usually in the top 20 to 10% of their own co-op, and Dara's exceeding that again. I think when we look at Dara and how he achieved it, so one is he spent time, and I think it's a great piece of advice for any new entrant, is he didn't just rock up and buy the first bunch of heifers he saw. Spent a lot of time, a lot of research, probably didn't tell you, it's a lot of up and down the country and in and out of yards to get the right stock, and that gave him the footing, so he had the right genetics on his farm day one. And then it's up to, gives you potential, massive potential in them genetics, and it's up to the management then to deliver it. And from my perspective, in talking to Dara from the early days, Dara does everything is attention to detail. And the key to Dara's success is putting his money in the right place within the stock and on the grazing infrastructure and managing it right. And it's basically as simple sometimes as doing the right things at the right time and attention to detail. And that's how Dara is delivering on his potential of his genetics.
Another aspect of the roadmap is herd maturity and, lowering the amount of replacements you're bringing into the herd every year. This seems to be, I guess, a challenge on a lot of farms, Patrick. Getting to target average herd age is something that farmers aren't achieving. How could you, what are the things that are missing in order to achieve this?
Again, very similar. We have to have the genetics. We have to be able to deliver on the genetics. And if we look at the roadmap, one of the key focus areas on the roadmap is to continually increase the EBI, as we have done in the previous 10 years as well. It's to keep that drive on there. And when we get that fertility performance, that we can hold on to cows and get them to stay for longer lactations. It's critical from a financial point of view. So if we look at a business plan, and Dara's new entrants and Dara alike are very good examples of this. So from a new entrant's perspective, you invest all your stock, you sold all your stock, dry stock, and you put them into dairy. So you've basically cashed in your chips and you're ready to go with your dairy business. And from a business plan point of view, we have to make sure that we hold on to them stock to protect our cash flows. But it also has a knock-on effect from an environmental point of view. If we can get the girls that we have on the farm to last longer, It takes less replacement, so there's less, it gets far more, it decreases the intensity of our carbon output, so we can get more output out of our cows through fertility, cows lasting longer in the system, and then requiring less support staff, as I call them, or replacement heifers on the farm, to keep that business running. And you just have a far more efficient system. And in that system, you also then have a more cash-friendly system because you have the right amount of productive animals on the farm comparable to your young stock.
Okay, and we'll go to a question now for you, Dara, from Peter, and he wants to know, how is your farm performing versus the business plan projections?
Yeah, well, I suppose we set out quite a conservative business plan to mitigate against risk. You know, as a new entrant, you're going to have to borrow money. So I suppose we are in year 2. We did a 6-year plan. We're exceeding our 6-year targets in year 2, be it with cow numbers and with output. So we're probably ahead of where we saw ourselves being, but you know, that leaves us in quite a good position to pay down our debt and to, I suppose, be profitable and enjoy what we're doing.
Have you a comment on that, Patrick? You would have worked with Dara on the business plan.
Yeah, so in any business plan, I think it's prudent. And Dara, I remember on the day we were out, always wanted to make sure he wanted to manage the risk. And one of them things he was adamant that don't over project the performance of the herd or milk price. And I think for anyone in any business plan, it makes sense to be prudent on that and keep it on a safe level. The fact that he grew his herd numbers quicker is a testament to his management and his stock he purchased in. But we would tend to go on a conservative level to give insurance to the business, because it's very important that we protect the cash flow in the first couple of years to get the business to a sound level and get the production up. So that's why we tend to go at a more conservative level.
And I guess, you know, being so comfortable answering Peter's question, you're obviously reviewing the business plan. I guess, again, from your perspective, Patrick, completing these business plans with farmers, how regularly should they be reviewing business plans?
Look, I sometimes say I have a great job, because the minute I do a business plan, it's wrong the next day, so things changes. So the business plan is a living document. It changes over time, so it gives you guidelines and targets and it's something to work towards. But different opportunities and different challenges that appear. And it's not that you have to sit down every day and revise it, but you should know, I think the key for the business plan is know the direction you want to drive in, to keep you focused on that and where you want to get to. And I think at any point you should revisit it, look at what you set out initially. Are you hitting your targets? And then maybe as things changes or new opportunities arise, and maybe you sit down, revisit the business plan, update it and go again. And it's not just one thing. I suppose probably a pet hate of mine is sometimes the business plan is for the bank and we get the money, and it should be for your farm and your family to make sure the decisions you're making are right for you.
Okay, and another question in for you, Dara, from Michael, and he's wondering, what have you put in place in order to achieve 270, 280 days of grass?
Yeah, well, I suppose we prioritise our investments. I mean, you have a lot of money to spend as a new entrant, so you need to get the biggest return on whatever you put your money into. So, like, we had invested in good stock, but I mean, the good stock aren't going to do the output if the grass isn't available or if they can't get out at days that grass to get onto it. So we would have reseeded, we definitely front-loaded a lot of the reseeding, so we did probably 80% was ready for year 1 in milk, so we did another 10% this year, so there's only 10% remaining. We put in, I suppose, very good roads, and like not just good finish surface, but we put in quite wide roads to manage cow flows. You know, from putting 150 cows across maybe a 5-foot road, it's going to take you a long time. So we put in quite wide roads. We put in very good water infrastructure, and I suppose, yeah, we're probably prepared to do all the extra work involved in getting out of grass. So strip roads, you know, spur lanes, going with front fences, back fences, watching the weather. It's a accumulation of all the small things, really.
And I guess moving on then from, I suppose, the environmental emphasis we see in the latest iteration of the Teagasc Dairy Roadmap. If we consider your farm, what are the key technologies that you're engaging with and implementing on your farm from an environmental conscious point of view? Yeah,
well, I suppose, Emma-Louise, I was lucky in 2018. I was given the opportunity to become a focus farmer with my co-op. So I was delighted to get that. So, you know, as part of that, we were probably shown the benefits of the likes of protected urea, low emission slurry spreading. So we implemented them from day 1. So they're the 2 biggest ones you can chase. Clover is another one, so we have a plan in place to introduce clover onto the farm. We have a lot of biodiversity on the farm, so we have 10 kilometres of hedgerows, we have 2 kilometres of river access. our farm was probably very different in its layout to a lot of dairy farms, in that 2/3 of our land is away from home. So we've over 100 acres of land that's a special area of conservation and it's farmed under designation. And this land is also in gloss under the geese and swan. So there's quite severe restrictions in how we manage this land, and let's say destocking it from October to March and all this kind of thing. So I guess it's just an awareness of all the products and mechanisms that are available to us and implementing them on farm. I suppose another one then is the high EBI cow. She's seen to be a more efficient cow, so she's going to produce more milk solids from less feed. And I suppose just the feed levels, we're trying to have as much of the diet homegrown as possible. And I suppose one other final measure then is on the meal we're actually feeding. We're trying to feed as low a crude protein meal as we can, you know, so we're just trying to do a bit of everything really.
And you've skimmed over the biodiversity in terms of hedgerows and you know, the geese and swan life that exists on the outblock. Can you give us some more insight into that? And you know, do you see this as a barrier to production, or is this something that works hand in hand with what you're doing in your dairy system?
No, well, I suppose we're lucky in the fact that the home farm is not tied up in that, so we can farm that independently. But I think there's great opportunity in this land to have it in the system and develop a farming system that complements it. So I suppose it's lower intensity type of farming, so we're rearing heifers on this, and we're kind of trying to develop a heifer sales enterprise on this land to utilise it. You know, you're not really going with any fertiliser, you're just a bit more conscious of how you manage it really. There's 2 kilometres of river access, as I've said, so this year alone we invested €100 an acre on a 60-acre block to fence off all water courses. We put in a water system on this, so it takes stock out of the river, it's protecting the riverbed, and you know, you're just reducing chances of pollution on that front.
Okay, a question in then for you from George, Dara. What is the soil fertility like on your farm?
Yeah, I suppose, in credit to my dad, fertility on the farm was very good. You know, when we joined the soils program again with the co-op, so we're soil sampling every 12 months for the first few years, just when there's a lot of change and a lot of grass being grown, you know, an index could drop if you're pulling off a lot of silage or a lot of surplus bales. So we'd be indexed to 3 and 4, and soil pH would be very good. So each time we reseeded a paddock, we tried to address that individual paddock and get it right at the time. And you know, then in the spring we'd be going with our low emission slurry, and let's say any paddock that's surplus bales come off, we're going with protected urea and K as well at the time, or if not, if we're not going with protected urea, we will go with the dribble bar.
Okay, and we're going to take a step back, Patrick, in relation to a comment that you've made and a question from Tim. If you increase cow lifespan and reduce your replacement rate, do you lose genetic potential?
No, so you gain genetic potential from what you breed off. Like your young stock is where you gain your genetic potential. Because you slow down your replacement rate, you won't, obviously the rate of change, like if you turn your herd if you had 33% replacement rate, you turn your herd every 3 years, and assuming that your heifers are high genetic merit, you'll increase the gain. What you're getting when you reduce that, when we're talking about 18%, we're not talking about dropping it down to 10% or anything like that. No, we're talking targeting 18-20%. So it's still a good level of turnover. It's trying to hit the balance between not letting the herd get too stale, and you'll still get good genetic gain. But the genetic gain is based on, and look, we'll all start it again next spring. It's the straws you put in next spring will land the year after. So it's a slow process anyway. And if we don't make the maximum gain from our breeding decisions, then regardless of the replacement rate, we won't make that gain on it. So we have to make sure we make the right breeding decisions every year, and that's cumulative. So once we get it in place, as in Dara's herd, it's there and we can build on that.
And a business plan question, you know, for both of you, from Patrick. So for you, what base cent per litre do you use in business plans that you work on, and then what did you use yourself, Dara? So we'll go to you first, Patrick.
So for all the business plans we complete, we use 28 cent a litre base price, so that'd be inclusive of VAT, and we make a milk solids adjustment, and I would use about €5.50 a kilo protein and €2.50 a kilo fat. And to answer Dara's question, that's what I use for Dara's plan as well.
Okay, and I guess...
Yeah, well, I suppose just on that, Emma-Louise, we would have stressed it, and I was very happy with how we stressed it, and then in reality we're achieving probably 5 cent above co-op average as an average. So, it really reduces the risk of something going wrong.
And I guess this is all what you were talking about. Dara's strategy was to protect the business and minimise any risk coming in.
From a new entrant point of view, when we look at it, obviously we have to go to the bank for a level of investment. So you have a new person in, we don't know, we have to go a level of conservatism. So if we were going back now to the bank again, if some opportunity came up for Dara, we have previous history now, so we can use Dara's figures, say, yes, he's 5 cent above the average, which is probably 7 cent a litre above the base. We can build that into the business plan. From a starting point and as a new entrant day one, we have to wait and see and build that conservatism. But when we revise the business plan again, we'll be able to work on what he's currently delivering.
And if we look at another aspect of sustainability, we talk about social sustainability and the labour on the farm. Again, this appears in the roadmap. You've made a massive change to the farm over the last 2 years, moving from a dry stock farm and I guess a total shift in the type of labour required. Can you give us some insight into how this has worked for you, the family farm, and how your day-to-day life has changed?
Yeah, I suppose, Emma-Louise, it depends who you talk to about going into dairy farming. Some people will be very negative and tell you you're tied to it, you're going to be doing 14 milkings a week, and then you'll talk to other people who are very positive about it. And I suppose I didn't just want to milk cows and pump litres out the gate, I wanted to do things right. So I suppose from the time I'd spent in New Zealand, I had seen how lifestyle comes into it as well, and it's probably influenced a lot of what I've done. So I suppose we put in good facilities, number one. We have a 20-unit milking parlour. We put eight rows of cows per milking through it this year. It's a nice place to work. If you're working on the farm, I could try and give you good notice of what your hours will be and what I expect you to do. The small things, such as putting a radio in the milking parlour, that I have 2 guys that do kind of regular relief milking for me, and I'm pretty confident that they enjoy coming down to the place. There's other simple things like just embracing technology, putting in cluster removers, things like an automatic washer, automatic drafting gate. Yeah, they all cost money, but put it out over a period of time and you experience the benefits of it. I think there's a lot of positives to it, and I suppose if you treat people right when they come into the farm, they're going to be more willing to come on board with you. And yeah, I'm very happy with how it's gone. I'd say I don't know if we work harder or not as hard, but it's definitely more structured work. And I suppose with a young family, I can plan my time off, and we set out the farm that the farm works for us at times of the year. So let's say breeding season, I restrict that to 10 weeks, so in April we'll try and get away for a weekend and just clear the head before you head back into breeding, and then just other things like that. I'm happy enough at times to take time off and just trust somebody that comes into the farm to do the essential work.
And I think that's a really good point, that you trust the people around you, that they know what they're doing and they'll probably do it as well as you will, and you could maybe do with the break at times. Yeah,
well, just on that, I've learned an entire new skill set in 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. So of course, anybody else, given the right training and the right time, and don't put them under pressure, of course they're going to be able to learn it. It's not rocket science, it does need to be done right, but if you give someone the time, you will be able to train them.
Yeah.
I think the benefit there, Emma-Louise, so it's a very simple system that he's implemented, and that makes it easier for you to train any outsider into the business. It's a very, and Dara's very clear in his mission, if you like, where he wants to be. So that helps. It's very clear in everything he comes across to anyone who walks into the yard.
And a question for you in terms of the targets you set out to achieve from Tom, Dara. He said you're already achieving your targets. What are the biggest challenges for your business going forward?
Biggest challenges, yeah, well look, you're going to have volatility in price and things like that, and you're going to have external factors such as Brexit and COVID. I mean, things like that are always going to change. Maybe labour, we're very lucky at the minute with the guys that are available to me, so I'm heavily reliant really on casual labour and relief people. There's no full-time staff on the farm, so maybe that's a challenge going forward. Outside of that, I don't know. It's a low-risk business what we've implemented, so I don't know. We try to be preemptive on what we've done. We spent a lot of time planning to minimise these risks. So there's nothing major really, but volatility. But again, if we're delivering a good price above base, again we're mitigated against that.
And Patrick, in light of the new changes and introductions to the 4th iteration of the Teagasc Dairy Roadmap, are you taking any different sort of approach to the business plans you make for new entrant and existing dairy farmers?
No, I think everything that's in the dairy roadmap would be, Dara's an example of it. Like, so everything he implemented was, from my perspective, was implemented to protect the business in that vulnerable period, as we mentioned before, in the first 3 years. So sourcing the right stock, getting the right performance, maximising your amount of grass into them, not overly investing. While he did put in a good parlour, there was a lot of housing and that you used existing sheds there. So putting your money, all his investment was put in high return stuff. And if we look at what's on the roadmap, like, so having more productive cows that last longer, utilising more grass, they're all positives from a cash point of view, so why would I change? And the other, increasing clover that will reduce your nitrogen input, that's a positive. So there's no negative there from a bit. So the business plan will be ensured by following the roadmap, because it's best practice, and that's all Dara has done. So the reason why Dara went down that road, it's best practice is the way he went. That ensures the business plan, and it also is the best thing going forward from an environmental point of view, from a sustainability point of view.
And just follow on from that, like a comment, a barrier or a challenge that people would see for some of these new technologies, like you're saying that Dara's seeing a return for it and it is best practice. Is there a big cost to, investing in these environmentally sustainable technologies?
No, I don't think so. Look, potentially from the EBI and sourcing the right stock, if you're a new entrant example, that will be a bit dearer than the average. But as Dara has shown, that whatever, it's usually probably 100, 150 euro. Dara probably in the differential, you'll have that made back within a year. If them animals last for 5, 6, 7 years, the return is massive. The reseeding point of view, it's reducing these feed costs. So again, there is a cost to the reseeding, but the return is huge. There's probably a bit of a capital cost around the less. Some people use contractors, some people buy the machine. But again, what we'd find, and listen to all the other presentations went out over the last 2 days, like it's a lot more usable, getting more nitrogen out of it, and they can implement it more on their grazing platforms. The clover is a benefit, as I said. So no, there's no major cost. Like, this is all a win-win from a farmer point of view. It's good for the environment and it's good for the pocket.
So more questions for the audience. To you, Dara, a listener has sent in, are you rearing your own heifers?
We are, yeah. We're I suppose the last 2 years I've bought in extra heifers just to utilise the outside land and graze that grass that we're growing. So we're rearing extra heifers with the plan to sell them, but that's just to utilise the land that we own, and I suppose make use of that really.
And on that, retaining your own heifers, a question that often comes up in terms of sustainability would be, the male calves. What are you doing with male calves? What sort of an arrangement have you for that?
Yeah, well, a beef farmer in Ballinasloe took all my male calves this year. We suppose you have to look at every option available to you. So I used a bit of Wagyu straws this year. So there was a small interest from a chef running a few restaurants in Galway that could be a potential outlet for them, so that's another part of it. And we're absolutely going to start using sex semen, so in the process of doing a deal for collars, so that will give me better information on the correct timing for the sex semen, and I suppose we can carry more heifers than we would if we were breeding conventionally and having 50% females and 50% males. We can carry more heifers than that, so by the use of sex it'll give us enough stock to utilise that outside land in a sustainable manner.
And to you, Patrick, a question in from Adam. How important is working capital and building in a cash reserve in expenditure plans?
It's essential. So, like in the capital budget itself, look, I think a small project, like if you're putting a 2-span add-on, the budget is small. You don't need a whole lot of an overrun. But if you're looking to build contingencies in, but if you look at large capital projects like conversion, like what Dara did, or on other people, or even existing farmers looking at it, we would tend to build in a contingency of 10 to 15%. And from a working capital, what you're bringing to the table yourself, I suppose the bank are very interested in that from their point of view, from a loan application. Like, so a bank won't 100% finance the proposal, so you have to bring something to the table yourself. So in Dara's scenario, they bought the stock, so they bought the value of the stock. That was a good proportion of the overall investment. And then the bank would have done the longer term stuff on the concrete. Just
to comment on that, Emma-Louise, I suppose when I met the banks, and I met a few banks, and I was lucky to get some of them out on farm at the time, and I could show them EBIs and I suppose co-op performance reports from some of the other farms I had bought from, so I could show them exactly what potential was there for these animals, and I think it gave them a bit of confidence in the system then at that point.
And you mentioned, I suppose, another aspect of, what you did was some, a good parlour and automation in it. But talk through the buildings, Dara, and in terms of, what you had that you could use in the short term.
Yeah, well, I suppose we tried to, we kept our dry stock system going for as long as we could to provide us with cash flow and keep them stock in the system. So for the first year or two, we outwintered our dairy animals as weanlings. Then I suppose their first winter they were on slats, and we kept sheep in our sheep shed. We still kept cash in the business by being able to sell the sheep. Then in our first year in milk production, we were able to convert the sheep shed to a cubicle shed. So while we did put in the parlour and all that on day one, we kind of stretched out everything else as far as we could. So we put in a 20-unit milking parlour, quite modern, I suppose, handling facilities. We have 180 cubicles on farm, and we were lucky really that there was a lot of slurry storage on farm. So calf sheds and calving sheds were available. So we were really lucky, I suppose, at what was on farm and just work around that.
And one or two brief questions to finish. Dara, your plans regarding cow numbers for the farm?
Yeah, well, look at it. I'm fairly happy with where we are now with output-wise and I suppose workload-wise. I'm certainly not going chasing numbers. I think I am going to milk a few more cows next year, but that's purely driven on grass growth figures on the farm. I suppose the best way for us to make money for the next few years is just to consolidate, let the herd mature, as Patrick has said, and take it from there, and I suppose just fine-tune everything. It's our focus really for the next few years is very much inside the farm gate.
And last question then from the audience, how are you matching your demand with your grass supply?
Well, look, we're trying to grow as much as we can. During the year we're not using excessive levels of nitrogen, but a lot of it comes back to planning. So your autumn rotation planner gives you your grass available for the spring, and your spring rotation planner pretty much gives you your grass available for the summer months. So a lot of grass measuring. I'll be doing 40 plus grass walks a year, and I suppose that to grow that grass you need all your indexes right as well. So it just comes back to, I suppose, the use of pasture base and grass measurement.
Okay, and look, one more good question, and so we'll take it, Dara. The conversion process, is there anything you would do differently?
Yeah, not a lot, to be honest, Emma-Louise. We spent over a year planning this out and meeting with the likes of Patrick, and I joined a discussion group in 2017 when dairying was only a pipe dream. So I brought a lot of people on the farm, and I've consulted as many people as I could, and I suppose I put a bit of information from everyone I met and put it all together, and we didn't make too many mistakes. No, maybe I know at the time the Focus Farm Group were saying maybe I could carry a few more cows in year one, but I mean, if you're a new entrant facing 95 heifers, it's pretty daunting. So no, I'm pretty happy with how it worked out, but I mean, we spent a lot of time planning it, and we made our mistakes on paper, and no, it's gone as planned, and we're very, very happy with how it's worked out.
And the final question, again to you, Dara, we've discussed it, and the business plan was set out as a 6-year plan, and you've achieved it at a very rapid pace. What is next for you?
I don't know, Emma-Louise. As I said already, I'm not going chasing anything. It's been a very, very busy few years, managing a dry stock enterprise, managing a conversion, learning a full new skill set and getting used to everything. So I think I want to enjoy the next year or two, let the herd settle down and really get good at everything else. Not that we're struggling on anything too badly, but just consolidate really for the time being, let the herd mature, and I suppose enjoy it and have time for things outside of farming. It's very important not just to get fully fixated on cows or cow numbers or output or anything like that.
I think the discussion we've had this evening has answered the question we have asked from the outset. Yes, the Teagasc Dairy Roadmap targets are achievable, and we see plenty of examples of it across the country with farmers like Dara, when we consider farming is a sustainable and profitable system. My thanks to the panel of Dara and Patrick for joining me this evening, Declan on production, and to James Dunn, Dairy Specialist, for helping us organise this session. That's it for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast, and my thanks to Dara Killeen and Patrick Gowing for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify, and for more information go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm Emma-Louise Coffey, and join me next time for your Dairy Edge.